is maybe a little more hawkish than what people expected to get from the Fed, even if the action was more dovish at 50, by saying we're not guaranteeing more 50,
Hondo,
by
Greenberg,
getting some stronger economic data. Remember, jobless claims are still at the weakest since May, so that's not pointing to a ton of stress in the labor market. And we got better industrial production, and retail sales are a little better. GDP tracking for third quarter is what, 3%? Not
Atlanta's 2.9.
Yeah, I mean, that's a healthier economy. So
chips and AI, right?
the market's in a bit of an interesting position right now in terms of maybe price for perfection as far as cooling inflation and weaker data that would allow bigger Fed cuts. And if we get stronger data, then maybe they don't need to cut quite as much as the market's hoping for, which is good for stocks and for earnings power, but again, 10-year yield a little bit higher.
Part of giving
some
money to Intel, getting involved with Intel.
That's one reason we got twos, tens, I think 18 basis points today, as we see the curve continue.
Well, that's something that has resumed, which is the steepening yield curve, and people saying it's long overdue, and we'll continue to watch that as well. But overall, it's been, look, good for the market. I thought Mike Wilson from Morgan Stanley, with his comment about the Fed and how it relates to stocks, was notable. He wrote over the weekend, the Fed delivered on what we thought was the best short-term case for stocks. Tactically, we continue to be neutral on defensives or cyclicals. As markets await more clarity on the labor data, we continue to recommend large cap quality bias. So again, we get to this debate about big versus small, where big has won out, although the market has brought in two since the rate cuts.
Early in those talks, they are talking
and then maybe
about
some M&A.
Yeah, you want to do that now? You ready to talk about that?
I feel like you're very busy.
I had nothing to offer, but that was a great conversation.
But now you're on the podium.
Clean water.
Because we could get a deal, right?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I always want you to just introduce me.
There.
I'm building you up.
Intel had been moving pretty well.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Intel and Qualcomm, of course. On Friday, late Friday, the Journal reporting an approach from Qualcomm to Intel. Got a lot of people excited, as you might imagine, of course. If a deal were to actually occur, it would be a monumental one, to say the least. And I can confirm, as so many other news organizations have, I think, since that first report, that an approach was made. What does that mean? Well, any number of viewers who've watched for years know that doesn't much mean anything, depending on the level of difficulty of actually getting to the finish line. And of course, the level of difficulty here would be quite significant. That said, it doesn't mean that it's not newsworthy, in part because, of course, Qualcomm at least has interest in exploring that. It's very much unclear whether there's been much going on since that approach was made. Beyond early is the way one person who is familiar with the situation put it to me. And as is often the case in situations like this, the chance that you would see a completed deal quite low. Quite low. Why? Well, any number of different reasons. First of all, let's keep an eye on shares of Qualcomm, because this morning you did have many of the analysts weighing in with their views, which may be reflected to a certain extent by the investor base of Qualcomm itself, saying, really sure you want to do this? We'll get to regulatory in a minute, but let me just share a couple of the research notes that we've got this morning. It's a similar course. It's not as though there are those who don't say, hey, we see some of the merits of a potential transaction.
Keep in mind
that said, Stacy Raskin, for example, typically the axe when it comes to
this
chip sector. Overall, hard for us to see a deal working out financially with acceptable risk if the fabs are included. Best I can tell right now, that is at least, well, hard to know. I'm not getting that level of detail, frankly. I did ask the questions, not really getting the answers to whether that's the case. But he says, we'd be honest, we prefer Qualcomm not pursue this. Seems very risky. Over at B of A, overall skeptical of the merits of any proposed transaction. Believe any announcement could create confusion, potential for headcount, roadmap disruptions, and be relatively positive for rivals of Intel, such as AMD, Nvidia, Broadcom, ARM. You go on down the list.
So far, we're seeing a couple of chips.
So while certainly, for example, B of A also admitting there are scale benefits in terms of
this morning,
increasing their scale and scope of Qualcomm's business. There are just so many risks. Where else are the risks? Well, they're regulatory, and it's not really here in the U.S. Chinese approval would be needed. Are you really going to get that? Is that really a possibility? Maybe. You can never tell, but it could take an awfully long time if, in fact, even it were to ever come in a positive fashion. Where is the U.S. in this, Sarah, becomes a question mark as well, because if there is a view in the U.S. part where we've been trying, of course, to bulk up our domestic chip-making ability, create, in a sense, a national champion to rival that of Taiwan's TSMC, if the U.S. were to feel that Intel was faltering in that, they might be encouraging of such a transaction. And then there are other questions, which is Broadcom.
We'll see where we're at there.
I can go back a couple of years. Qualcomm at least had some interest in Intel. Broadcom has. If in fact they were to go into sale mode, then it would be very interesting to see who else emerged. But again, right now you've got to put the chances of any potential transactions very low. That always can change. Oftentimes deals like this, we say, nah, there's no way, because it is such a small percentage. But you can get momentum. It's unclear to me whether there's any momentum here as of yet.
What about this potential investment from Apollo?
Yeah.
That report
I did. That was a Bloomberg story. It's interesting. Apollo obviously has already partnered with Intel in one of their fabs, the same way Intel has partnered with Brookfield, which goes, of course, to the constrained position they find themselves in at Intel in terms of capital, needing to partner. This case would be different. Why not, right? You're Apollo. You see a potential opportunity. You can structure something to meet Intel's needs, perhaps in terms of debt or equity, and what might make the most sense. Having spoken to Mark Rowan lengthily last week, that's the business they're in. Whether that comes to any real fruition also is unclear. But we do know Intel needs. They have significant needs in terms of capital, given the changing face of the business that they're in, the fact that so much has gone towards generative AI, towards NVIDIA, while Gelsinger is pursuing this long-term plan to turn around this company.
The head of U.S.
Just a reminder, I think, of what's happened in third year of shrinking sales. Right, they had this foundry business that the U.S. was all about. Right, they lobbied for the chip deal. They got chips money, and then I guess
they've gotten it, although a lot of it hasn't come in yet. But yes, they've got the commitments in terms of the financial.
But what is it? They don't have the customers. They didn't get NVIDIA.
These fabs take many years, and so you've got to outlay so much capital. And meanwhile, your core business is in a bad place. And so, can you actually meet the $52 billion in debt and you're still constrained in terms of how much capital you can put out there, because fabs can cost tens of billions of dollars. And that
decrease in
how you get through that period, that 5 to 7 year period, until you get to the other side somehow, where you're producing chips that are at the leading edge on the market, and that's still a question. That's kind of the key.
Why the stock has lost 56% of value this year.
Definitely the worst on the Dow for the year. When we return, we'll take a look at what Lena Khan told 60 Minutes last night about greedflation, and in particular the Kroger-Albertsons deal. We will get to some of the earnings. The Fed speak the data this week. Apple, there's some news on airlines and Boeing, downgrades of GM and Microsoft in a moment.
We all obviously see Powell talk of that change moving from.
So this is pickleball. It's basically tennis for babies before adults. It should be called wiffle tennis.
Or the most important thing to look at till the jobs data and what's
we got nothing
there, and until we see a big movement in the jobs data, that is going to be the case. That's where we're going to want to keep our eyes focused. Moving forward. So that's where I will be keeping my eyes for sure. As we get into the about 15 minutes away from the open here, a little muted, as you can see here on the charts. QQQ actually taking a little bit of a drop here. I'm not quite sure what that is being caused by here right now, but we can see a little bit of the drop. I don't think we don't have any economic data that came out yet, but we are seeing a little bit. QQQ now moving down almost to even on the day. SPY, same thing. SPY had been up as high as 569, almost 570 before retracing back here to 569 now. So we are seeing something hit a little bit here. Not 100% sure what it is. We're gonna pull up. I just realized I need to pull up a few things here as we're going. To check that out. What I did notice was in the bigger move is China, again, a lot of talk that, over the weekend, China did some play with not their rates, but with their reverse repo, basically gave an infusion of cash into the Chinese ecosystem or monetary supply, which, helped out, the looks on China for the weekend, over the weekend. So we are seeing that move a little bit here. You see Baba. I was looking at Baidu is up about 1.4. So some of the bigger gainers, JDD had been up earlier, now up over 2.38. So China retailers are definitely getting a little push. I even saw PDD, which we know is Temu, which we've been having some struggles, getting a decent move up here this morning. So, it does seem like the China play is back intact there. Again, we said, that does play a little bit into Tesla and what's going on there. Not giving Apple much of a run. I was curious to see if that's moving Apple's price this morning, as we know that the China, Apple's U.S. sales of the 16 were looking pretty good, but we weren't seeing as much of that in the cell phone for Apple and so forth. Or excuse me, we weren't seeing China sales as good as the U.S. Doesn't look like any more news there. As we do get ready here to look at our week, I was taking a look. So for earnings this week, let's start there. For earnings this week, we have Micron MU, and we're going to talk about Micron a few different times here this morning, but Micron going into earnings here this week. We also see Costco, Accenture, ACN, AutoZone, AZO. So a couple that I keep an eye on that I'm looking at, Micron, and we're going to talk why on Micron with semiconductors and sort of what's going on there, how they're moving, and what we're seeing in that sector as a whole. Costco will give us a good big box retailer look at what's going out there. We had seen some strength with Costco, so we'll see if that strength is going to continue here. And we see pretty flat so far this morning. Their earnings look to be on Thursday. Costco has had good year-to-date movement, up about 38% so far year-to-date. So you can see that move up that it has made here. So Costco's had a nice run year-to-date. Another one I'll be looking at is Accenture, ACN, one of the big four consulting firms. I want to see what they're saying, because their data is not only give you a lot of good information about them, but it gives you information on other sectors that they do such big business with. So it will tell us what's going on. Also a little insight into what's going on federally. They're big federal contractors. AutoZone, AZO is going to be reporting orders. I don't think AutoZone's that big, but where it really is a big deal is it will let us know, are people spending money to fix their cars, or are they more going out and buying new cars? If they have really good revenue at AZO AutoZone, it's usually a bad harbinger for the GM, Ford, and other car producers. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. We talked about that last week. Steve watches the AutoZone their data that shows their inventories and what's going on there, so we know how that's going. Another one I'll be keeping an eye on this week, I like home builders. KBH is one to keep an eye on this week. They will be reporting earnings tomorrow. The KB Home has seen a pretty good year-to-date return, again up about 41%, up almost 90% in the last 12 months. So again, a strong producer. Let's see what happens there as they move into their earnings. And you can see they've moved up on their last 4 earnings. So it could be one to kind of keep a good eye on moving into earnings. They were up nicely this morning. after dropping down in the early morning. They bounced right up, gapped all the way up to this 88. They had dropped down as low as 86.92 earlier this morning, so that has moved back up. Those are really the big ones. CarMax. Oh, Jefferies, I'll be looking at. Jefferies, the rating service, financial service company that does a lot of the ratings and so forth. Also, let's see what their earnings look like. They're up a little bit here this morning, about 0.69, almost 0.7%. Another one that's had really good year-to-date increase at almost 55%. So really good to see that within the mix. On the other side that I saw some analyst reports, not a ton that I've seen so far this morning, but GM did get dinged with an estimate from Bernstein. They said that they're looking for it to drop down or lower their estimates from 54.5 to 53. Still about 10% above where it's at now still. So even though they're giving it an overweight, it's more about a slowdown. And to be honest with you, they didn't really knock the company. They just pointed out, again, if we look at their year-to-date gains, up almost 38%, and 48.53. They really have moved up. And if you really even look back and you take a look at their November lows here, where they, after the strike that hits Stellantis and Ford, it was trading at 25, up almost 85% since then. So definitely one to look at there. I was keeping a close eye on the early morning hours to see what is moving one way or the other. So let's take a look at that scanner we have here. And we can see Nuvi holding up nicely. Almost 81%. So we are seeing some pumpers here today. Nuvi looks to be the pre-market pumper so far today. Up almost 85.97% here. You can see that move up it took. Does look like it's trying to move back up. So Nuvi, definitely keep that on your pumper watch today. Again, that is NVVE. What else do we have on there? Let's take a look at Nucleus, up about 53%. Let's see what we've got going on there. That's a little bigger of a retracement here. Could find support here at this level. If it could, you could look at that, but that's one you really want to watch here at that 0.2811 level. So let's see also, I hadn't taken a look. What are the market movers in the wrong direction so far? Seeing if any of the big boys getting hit so far. Nothing that I see in the S&P getting hit too hard, mostly small pumpers, so to speak. Okay, let's get back into our general stuff here. Again, we're looking at QQQ right now, set to open up slightly here at 482.50. Well, now it's even, so we are about even. SPY's holding up a little better, although again, we're seeing in the pre-market here, especially over the last 20 minutes or so, moves down. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Bitcoin held up pretty well over the weekend at 63,261. So again, that line that I've sort of drawn in the sand here as being the really important level to close above. We are above it. It has given us decent support, and we've bounced back over it each of the last 4 days or so. So that's what I am watching for there. But Bitcoin looking pretty strong so far. And we will take a little bit of a deeper look into Bitcoin and what's going on for the week this afternoon. I do have Jeremy Vreeland and Matthew Tuttle coming in here at 10 a.m. this morning for an interview to discuss a little bit about their watch list, what they do there. We show their watch list. It's about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour live stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m. These guys have been nailing it. I mean, I can tell you, I've been watching that snap that they talked about. But these guys have been nailing it all over the place. And you can see Snap up pre-market about 1.39. And, you know, they started talking about it early last week when it was trading in under that $10 range, in the 9 and change, to be honest with you. And they nailed it. It looks good, continues to look good. I like it. I want to see if it can fill this gap up here. We'll talk to them, ask them if they think Snap will fill the gap there. I do want to add that into this, so when I do talk to them today, I can ask about it. Perfect. Okay, so we have them today, and then I will be back later on this afternoon at 1 o'clock. At 2 o'clock for our morning, look at the markets. We are now just 3 minutes away here from the open. I will point out oil here. Let me pull up my notes. Oil had been moving up again this morning. It was sitting at a decent spot. Steve, who is really the expert when it comes to that, points out 70 is the break even for a lot of these companies, or where they start making good profits from not making good profits. We see the WTI, which is the light crude oil out of Texas, at 72. We see Brent oil at 73.98. So both moving up a little bit. Not that unexpected, you would think that it would start to find some support on the Fed optimism. There also is the Mideast tensions, which would raise prices if they think there's any kind of, interruption with either pumping in the Middle East or more shipping issues in the Suez Canal, as we know. That obviously can dip into it. I mentioned it a little bit earlier that the People's Bank of China they cut its rate on its 14-day reversal repo rate by 10 basis points, which injected some liquidity into the financial system. They did that to try to boost sentiment. It is working, as we've seen so far on the e-commerce out of China. So we'll see what happens there. We do know that China's financial regulators, including its top central banker, are set to hold a news briefing on Tuesday, fueling expectations that Beijing could announce a big-ticket stimulus measure to boost its economy. So that's the other part that we're seeing here. So China on everyone's mind, and it does seem today that's working in our favor. Like we talked about, though, everybody take a deep breath whenever you hear any of this economic data points, because it is causing people to go crazy one way or the other. We are getting ready to hit the open here, so we'll give that a quick watch before I go into some more information that I have. I will mention another one that got a downgrade today that I saw, Palantir, PLTR. You guys know we've been all over that, especially as it entered. And today, I should point that out, as we go live here at 9:30, 3 new additions to the S&P 500 actually joined the S&P 500 today. Will be Dell, Erie Insurance, and the pre-mentioned here, Palantir, PLTR. Palantir is trading down a little bit here. It actually has moved up a little bit. It was trading down almost at 36.30. And now as we are open, it is starting to do the same. So let's see if it reverses the same way that it did in the pre-market hours. If we get some negative sentiment that then turns into more positive sentiment, or if we just start to see some negativity. Let's take a look here. QQQ, on the other hand, coming off the lows of the pre-market morning, trying to move up here over the last 5 or 6 minutes. Losing a little bit of momentum so far. Seeing the VIX up about a point here to 1633. So the VIX, we've seen it sort of bottom out in that 15 level. It did get down that level last week before bouncing back up. Apple getting hit here, down about a half a point so far. So Apple, another one starting to get hit here. Alibaba, like we talked about, Chinese e-commerce moving in the right direction. Same with Baidu, still up over a point. Seeing a lot of the computers getting hit here. Trying to turn, we see a lot of things trying to turn positive though. Donald Trump stock down about 1.85. Did see so far he hasn't sold. So far he said no to another debate. Foot Locker getting hit pretty hard here, down about 1.57. FedEx, which we know got hit pretty hard after their earnings last week, starting to get a little bit of a move up, almost up a point here this morning. JD now up 2.38%, so it's trying to challenge the highs of the pre-market moving here. So JD again, Chinese e-commerce trader. Nvidia, you know, one of our favorites to watch here. Nvidia right now at about 117. You can see that sucker moving up nicely here since the open. Can it hold speed is the question. Keeping an eye. Qualcomm trying to move positive here. So that is taking the news or the suggestion that there could be a merger. They're up. SMCI, on the other hand, getting hit a little bit here this morning. Molson Coors up 1.75%. I hadn't really heard. Oh, well, that's why. We got a price adjustment here. So we've seen Wells Fargo has adjusted their price target on Molson Coors from 52 to 54. Maintains an underweight rating on it. So that is interesting to see. Nike down about 1.4%. Constellation Energy, which we knew had the big move up on the news that they are going to partner with Microsoft or sell Microsoft energy produced at 3 Mile Island. We're seeing that definitely pump up nicely here. I'll tell you what, if that one gets above the top of this 263, oh, rejected right at a 263.63, we could have seen that run a little bit, but not so far. Okay, what else is moving? Bank of America up about 0.32, so seeing a little move in the financials. Seeing Berkshire Hathaway, excuse me, and Mr. Buffett get a little bit. Let's see what else we have going on. What's anything moving? Let's take a look here. Let's take extended hours out of that, and let's look at performance. Okay. Yeah, so we're seeing a little negativity. QQQ's gone negative here again. So we are seeing a little bit of that. Seeing the tick here right now at about negative 249. We're now down almost 1/10 of the point here on that. $482.26, so we are stuck at that spot so far. You can see on the short term. Let's take a look here. And we're seeing Constellation now getting a little bit of a hit here. Trading back down towards the midpoint on the day. Tesla can, oof, get a little hit here, but Tesla's been moving up nicely, up almost 2.8, so that's helping the index for sure. NRG, another mover here this morning. NRG, energy. So energy definitely so far is the one everybody is sort of looking at here. So energy sector moving. So speaking of which, I was looking this week and this weekend, and I saw a report from Morgan Stanley from Michael Wilson. And he was talking about how they are now moving, and Morgan Stanley has said that the firm is now neutral on defensive versus cyclical sectors due to valuations. And I was a little surprised by that when I read it, but then as I started to look at what he was saying, you can sort of see that. And part of that is, you know, the funds or the sectors that we think of as defensive, right? Utilities and financial services are the first two that sort of come to mind. And I was looking here at the Spider Select Fund for utilities, and what you see here as you start to look down is it's outperformed so far year to date, the SPY, the QQQ, you know, NASDAQ, all of that. It's up about 27.09% year to date. And when you take it into account that the SPY currently is up about 20%, you know, it's outperforming the SPY, you know, the S&P 500. So I could see why. I hadn't realized that it was outperforming. And the other one was financials, which is slightly outperforming the S&P too. So, you know, the S&P rose to all-time highs here. And with that being said, we can see that both the financial sector and the utility sector are outperforming it actually year to date, which, you know, usually we see movement in those following cuts. In the 3 to 8 months following, Morgan Stanley has said that historically they tend to, you know, recommend those things, but that right now they're expecting a little bit of underperformance maybe by those sectors to start. And then I have one that might interest you or might surprise you too, is semiconductors, right? We just know what NVIDIA has done. So I expected to see that, you know, sector had as, you know, heavily outproducing or outperforming what we had seen in the markets, and that actually isn't the case. It's only up 18.75% year to date. So the SOX, which is one of the indicators or one of the ETFs around semiconductors, is down. And then from that, I started to do a little more research on that, and I found a good article that sort of talked about the chip makers in general, and I actually have a chart for us here. And as you can see, not a chart, but a spreadsheet. What it did is this was put together by, I don't want to give it wrong, I'm trying to find who put this together. This was from FactSet, which is part of MarketWatch, sorry. And what they pointed out here is if you look, NVIDIA, which is the darling sort of to everybody right now, that 94% of the analysts, and there had to be at least 5 analysts covering a stock for it to go, and there were 94 different semiconductor stocks that got tracked. But with that being said, these were the ones that had the most bullish analyst reports. So when you look at it, Micron, which we talked about, and that's why I said we talk about it more today, actually has an implied 12-month upside potential of almost 93%. And 90% of the analysts have a buy basis on it. And its consensus price target of about 167.85. So 167.85. And if I pull up MU here, you see it's only trading at 94. And it's up, but it is up about 3.43 this morning, you know, partly, and I bet that because of that news. So definitely one that will be interesting to keep an eye on. You know, from there, the next one was ICHR, currently trading at about 28.33, 52%. And NVIDIA, I mean, still has about a 28% upside over the next year, so I don't want you to think that it has a negative one. But, you know, it is important to point out. So some of the ones that I'll be adding to my watch list to keep an eye on: Micron, iChor, Allegro, Semtech, Onto, Power Integrations, Marvell, and of course Taiwan Semi, and for me AMD in that same group. And we're going to talk a little bit later about dividend plays, and what we'll see in dividend plays, Broadcom is one of the better dividend plays, so it might be one that, even though 17% here, with the dividends they offer, might bring it up towards that 24-25% that I'd be looking at to target here. So, you know, definitely semiconductors, you know, still what matter out there when we talk about that. You know, we talk about AI a lot here. One of the things that I noticed too, another article that came out, was in regards to a partnership with GE Aerospace partnering with OpenAI and Microsoft to you know, and that's GE, that's just their general stock, that's just part of GE Aerospace here, is GE. They were up about a half a point. They were up even better this morning, almost at they broke 189 at one point. And part of that is they have launched what's called Wingmate, which is a generative AI chat GPT type program that they've put together to help their 52,000 workers. You know, and what it does is, or where it's helping them, and again, we talked about how AI is going to have a lot of different ways that it works, and it's going to happen in a lot of ways that you don't even realize you're using it. And this would be like one of those examples on my part, is what they're using it for, or where they're finding a lot of it, use case for it, is, you know, it can summarize a manual. So if an engineer or someone on the workforce is trying to figure out what's wrong with this instrument, this, you know, component, whatever it might be, they're able to go to this database, again, Wingmate, type in the information, and, you know, search through all the answers to try to find potential solutions for quality issues. You know, and then, as they said, some of the things that just, you know, are low-hanging fruit, it will help them save time tremendously on presentations and even emails. So, you know, sort of the quiet use of AI that we see. And their results from that are pretty impressive so far. You know, they've had it up for about 6 weeks, and they've seen almost a little over 500,000 inquiries. So their workers are using it, and their workers have already uploaded about 200,000 pages of information from it. So, you know, definitely getting used a lot. That was interesting. I saw a quote from their chief information officer, David Burns, who said, ultimately, this will strengthen our ability to help the aerospace industry meet our highest objectives for enhanced safety, sustainability, and reducing supply chain constraints. So very positive, you know, outlook, very positive use of it. And we had seen GE moving up on that news. Microsoft was fairly flat when I looked earlier this morning. Let's see if that's moved at all on this news. I don't know why I don't have MSFT there. And not really, down a little bit here, down over half a point. And again, QQQ has gone back positive here. SPY has been moving down, though, here, back towards positive, or towards neutral. We do see the Russell 1000 is up about 0.2, and the Russell 2000 is up almost a half a point here. So we are seeing that Bitcoin getting hit a little bit here again, as long as we stay above that 63, close above 63. We are looking good there. Gold set a new all-time high again today, 26.3250. So the move to gold still there. Silver was up early in the pre-market trading, getting hit a little bit here now, down about 1%. Oil's holding steady. VIX up about a half a point, so not much of a big move there. ASST up about 3.5, so we're seeing a little bit move here from asset entities. Boeing is up about 0.18% on that news. Continue to see Alibaba pushing up here, trying to get up above 2%. Are any of the normal pumpers moving here this morning? Not much with XQ or GLMD making another 10% move. It had made a move up in pre-market hours, so another one trying again here. TBIO again. Telesis Bio that pumping a little bit here again today in pre-market hours. Let's see if NVVE is holding up here. That was the big mover in pre-market hours. And that's trying to stay in play here. You can see it got back up to that 876 before dropping down. So any break above that 876 here would be a big move. Only thing you start to worry about is, are you going to move into ascending wedge here, which is not usually a good sign. If it breaks to the bottom, it breaks hard. So let's see, but it can move either way out of that. Okay, 9:48. Let's take a look at the tick currently. Hold up the wrong one. Still down about 249. MBLY, Mobley moving up about 4.28%. Again, this was a play on autonomous driving. One of the companies that Intel is a major stockholder owner of. So, interesting to see that move up again here today. Micron, like we talked about, 3.85. Wow, look at Temu, 2.69 now. PLCE, another one, the children's place that we've been talking about here since it made its move up after the huge earnings beat and investment they announced in there. Signing Day Sports, another one of those pumpers, up about 16% today. GLMD now up 10% on the day, 10.30 here. I mean, it's got room all the way to 11 here pretty easily. Pumpers have been crazy, I'll tell you. Apollo up about 0.88. Again, Apollo talking about an investment maybe into Intel of about $5 billion. GE Verona, another GE division, seeing a nice move up again here today. Up 3.28. I see they got maintained to buy. We see Jeffries raise their price target to 290, 293 actually. So even as that breaks to new highs, it is just moving. GM getting hit today. And again, I wonder how much of this was that analyst, analyst report rather. So we'll see what is going on there. What else do we see moving, shaking, and baking so far this morning? I see breaking news that the suspect in the Trump shooting attempt on the Florida golf course had left a note that said, "Dear world, this was an assassination attempt," so that is interesting. Ooh, seeing that hundreds of daily flights around the world are running into GPS spoofing, a hazard that causes new risks for pilots and passengers. That definitely a little scary there. Interesting as it comes to financial markets around the world, seeing news here that Commerzbank and UniCredit, Italy's UniCredit, increased its stake and its European peer to around 21% pending regulatory approval, and a move that could meet resistance in Germany. The German government said it won't sell any additional shares of the bank for the time being. We know that they had taken a stake in that company, in that bank, and it wasn't surprising. We talked about that with Steve. Again, we talked about TSMC and Samsung. Those chip makers are in talks to build a giant factory in the UAE, so they're moving here a little bit today. Seeing Treasury yields move up here a little bit after settling Friday at 3.727. They are starting to move up a little bit. So seeing an article here talking about that a soft landing for the European economy could be slipping away, increasing pressure on policymakers to step up on the pace of the interest rates cuts. So business surveys that came out on Monday indicated that activity in the Eurozone's two largest economies were much weaker than expected in September. Germany, stuck in a deep manufacturing rut, shed jobs at its fastest pace in more than 15 years, excluding the pandemic. France's economy came under renewed pressure after a boost from the Paris Olympics, so these numbers aren't pretty, said economist Pantheon Macro, called the data ugly. So, the questions will be, are an October rate cut on the table? And it says that the derivative market now shows investors see the European Central Bank key rate at 3.31 next month, meaning that they are pricing in almost a full quarter point reduction from the current rate. So previously we had seen mostly that the investors had been pricing that in December. So that is a little bit of a change. So while we are seeing more of the talk of soft landing here in the U.S., we are seeing more of an issue when it comes to what's happening overseas. And again, as we take a look at what's going on here, QQQ now starting to move back up. So we're seeing some muted move up here so far this morning. Nothing too crazy. As you know, those are things that I actually like to see, is a muted start. When we've seen those just outrageous climb ups, they tend to be sold off. I will say, though, what we have to, or at least I'm worried or watching about, is when Tesla and Nvidia sort of lead the move up, they have tended to lead the move down in the afternoons. So those are the things that I will be watching here. Nvidia is still moving up, not all the way to highs of the day. It did get up to almost 117, 116.99 before, but that's one to keep an eye on. The other one, Tesla, which is just mooning here, 3.8%. Almost broke above 248 here, so that is definitely a good positive here. I am going to take a quick break as we get to the 10 o'clock hour here to bring Matthew Tuttle from Tuttle Capital and Jeremy Vreeland from Bullish Bears on. So do keep in mind we will be back in just a matter of minutes, but I do have to step away here in a few to get ready for them. So you will see a screen that says we'll be coming right back.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to get... Gotcha. Oh, better than average. Got a nice bike ride in. Did some fun stuff without crashing. Heck yeah. Trying to get Matthew's phone number here so I can text him something. There we go. Yeah, that thing it kicked over for a pullback to about $10. It's got room to keep. I think it's getting there. It's just got to accumulate one more level, and then it'll shoot up to that. Adding a couple others to the watch list. Salesforce is. Give me 1 second. Micron's got some moves in it, but there's a couple key resistance points to point out. There we go. A bit of a cup to finish a handle here. Let's see. I'm hoping there he is. I got the password to you like last minute.
Yeah, it's fine. I sent the link, and I'm like, oh, crap, there's a password for it.
I would have figured out I needed one.
Yeah, that would have been a fun one to try and get last minute. Like when I'm like on something or broadcasting, I just don't look at anything. I'm never getting messages that way. There we go.
Screen. Matthew, give me 1 second to get you in the screen here.
I suppose I should go close that position real quick. There we go.
Okay, I get everybody in. Look at that. Let me just throw my headphones on here.
Let me get into, there we go. I'm going to flip you to my other screen.
Okay.
There we
Let me
go.
know when you're ready, guys.
I'm ready when you guys are.
Okay.
All over it.
Welcome back, Quasar Markets Live. So happy to have two of the stars when it comes to technical analysis and breaking it down. Jeremy Vreeland with Bullish Beers and Matthew Tuttle with Tuttle Capital. Guys, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Better by the minute, man. That's been a great trading day already.
Yeah, a little crazy start to the day. You know, I wanted to get you guys on because we do show the watch list, the live stream that you guys have been doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays here on Quasar Markets. And you guys have been on fire lately. I know I've been watching it for a few weeks, even before we started on Quasar Markets with it. And you guys have, like, Jeremy, what's that success rate at right now?
It was like 94.2% last I checked because we had 100% from last week. So
that is just insane. Yeah, I mean, I know last week I was talking to you before we came on here. I was looking at Snap because that was one of the big ones that I got to take away from you guys on. And, man, it just taking a little bit of a pullback here this morning, but I love what you guys talked about filling the gap there. Could you guys tell me a little bit, how did you guys meet? How long have you guys known each other?
Gosh, about the middle of last year we started talking. I reached out on Twitter. I was looking to put something together for like price action versus Jim Cramer type of thing, to be able to put technical analysis up against him. And I remembered that Matthew started an ETF called EST Jim, and I was like, I would love to do something like that where we can collaborate and just go pick over Jim, and not necessarily shame him so much, but brag on him a little bit and just put technical analysis in front of it.
Yeah, because he never does. He just throws out whatever comes to his mind as quickly as he can. I mean, I know, Matthew, you guys killed it with that for a while when it was big. I've been a big fan of one of the new things you've added, Matthew, is the MicroStrategy leverage positions. Could you tell us about that? I saw you added those. I'm a huge fan as a Bitcoin player at MicroStrategy being the leverage play for Bitcoin. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a couple weeks back we did 2x spot Bitcoin long and short, and we've been working on the MicroStrategy, and we just launched it. It was like Tuesday or Wednesday. We're already up to basically 30 million in it, which, wow. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't happen for a new ETF. I mean, generally it takes a little bit of time for people to catch on.
I can tell you, it's the talk of the crypto nation. I'm big in crypto Twitter and that, with my position as the president of the American Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Association. And, that's all I heard talked about this weekend, was people using it as a function for that, is, a leverage play against Bitcoin, because MicroStrategy moves usually at about twice the level that Bitcoin does on any given day with its volatility. And the volume there and everything else. So I was fascinated by that added to it. So I'm excited to watch that and play with it a little bit. I actually did make a move on it last week, made a nice play on it, and did it successfully. So I thank you for that.
Nice.
You guys,
we just got options traded on it the other day too. I mean, I'm an options guy.
I didn't see that. I am too.
Jeremy's an options guy, so that's pretty cool to see for me.
Yeah, especially that quickly to have the volume to put that in place. So that's awesome. Jeremy, you are sort of the guy that keeps the watch list in place here. Like I said, Snap's one that you've nailed recently. What last week? Do you have a couple more you want me to pull up here that you guys had?
Sure. Last week we were talking a little bit about, Micron, of course, was one of them. And then another one that Matthew's been killing it with is the nuclear energy supply for the AI situation. It seems to be ticking up.
Well, all energy. I mean, Constellation CG just blasted off today. Blasted off Friday on the news. I mean, that's just crazy.
Friday, yeah.
That they're going to reopen 3 Mile Island. Those of us that are old enough to have lived through that find that to be a little concerning, especially since I'm in Ohio, which is not far from Pennsylvania. So
I was born in Pittsburgh.
There you go.
Yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, energy. They were some of the biggest movers this morning. Was energy in general. I saw that. So that, yeah, CG definitely a darling right now, moving in the right direction. There. What else were you looking at, Jeremy, last week?
Well, Matthew pulled up 2 others, NEE and the other one was TEM, and TEM is actually set up for a nice little pullback here.
Okay, let me pull that one up for you. Tempest. Right about 53.51 here, right about the middle of its 52-week range.
We got an ultimate target on that one. Basically, for reversion trade is like right at about $60.
Yeah, right where that midpoint is on the price channel right now. I can see that.
It's looking for testing support today, and if it holds like 52, we got a pretty good shot at swinging through that extension target. It's looking still consolidating a bit in this channel, but it's still generally bullish.
Yeah, I mean, energy, there's no doubt with what's going on, is definitely doing it. Tempest looks like it is set. I can see that move right up to 60 here.
Well, yeah, Tempest isn't energy. Tempest is digital biology.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so we're big into all aspects of the AI theme. Obviously you need energy to make AI go. Absolutely. Which is why you're seeing the nuclear move. Digital biology is still 1 or 2 years away. Tempest is a fairly new stock. It's been doing well, so it's one of the digital biology names we're in now. But we're watching that 1 to 2 years from now. We think that's going to be a major theme. The next thing along the lines of the energy we're going to talk about on the watch list this week, Jeremy, just so you know, is the natural gas names.
Yes.
Because I think those are going to be the next nuclear when it comes to fueling AI.
Yeah, I mean, all you got to do is look there again. I lean on my background on Bitcoin and crypto, is look at where they build data. The Bitcoin mining companies. What do they chase? They chase natural gas flaring. They chase, nuclear energy, lowest cost of energies. And you're seeing that in data centers as being the same thing. It's going to be the most important thing. Think about it. Microsoft is going to use all the energy from an entire nuclear power plant to basically power data centers. People don't realize how much energy it takes, and that move to the green energy is huge. And it's also the cost of energy that comes from nuclear, per kilowatt is a lot less than you see from other sources. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's where America really stepped back. In Europe and, the Eastern Bloc, nuclear energy still powers a lot of stuff there, and they build them, put them online all the time. Here in the U.S., I don't think a new one's come online in like 20 years. So we are definitely behind the thing there. Natural gas would be a way to follow. So I can definitely see that based on, the fact that I know Bitcoin miners, that's who they chase.
I'm still waking up, so I got a little mixed up with the AI biology.
No,
but yeah, NEE is also looking pretty strong. I mean, that thing's just trending right along. Broke out from a cup and handle formation back from about towards the end of August there, and we're looking at continuation with that one pretty nicely through. Oh gosh, that's going to break out its all-time high around $87 pretty quick here.
Yeah, definitely looks that way. Looks like it's going to get through that 84 spot. If it gets through 84, it could take right through it.
It's got that look. And then
that's a great looking chart on it. Yeah.
The other one, you know, when you mention natural gas, I mean, we all look at the Widowmaker. That's one of my favorite scalps of all time. I caught that a couple years ago and just, I mean, murdered it. So now it's one giant, little inverse head and shoulders type setup right at exactly where the angular support was back in August, and we're starting to break the neckline and start looking for reversion. So even UNG's like pushing the target up to about 1750 there.
I wouldn't be buying UNG because structurally that's
right. It's a broken instrument.
It's just crap because of the contango.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as bad as the VIX ETP.
Yeah, no, we won't get into that. Yeah. I think you're the only person that I've heard rail more on the VIX than myself there, Matthew. Myself and Scott Bauer, I talk about it all the time. It's just, it doesn't work.
For me, it's not necessarily about what you trade, it's about how you trade it.
Absolutely.
I ran that one with some debit spreads and just came up with some killer outcomes. And that's kind of how I touched that one. It's kind of kid glove position where I'll take some very low cost debit spreads and just let them work. And then if the thing just does the old Widowmaker move like it typically does,
right.
That's when I can sell options and flip my position. So it works pretty well.
It's one that I always tell people on the VIX is you want to buy the VIX protection before you need it, not as you need it, because that's when it's too late. You got to get it when it's down in this 15, 16 handle, knowing it's going to go back up to 20, 23 when it hits something, not trying to catch it on that way up, because as you see, I mean, it's the only one that takes the elevator up and down.
Right.
So that's why you got to watch that for sure.
What we also tell people is most of the time, and not all the time, but most of the time, you want to own puts on those vehicles.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the way to be.
That's a great insight there. Know what I was interested in? I saw that Morgan Stanley is actually talking about that they're not going with their defensive stocks and utilities as much right now because of how much they had moved up over the last, the year so far. They've actually outperformed S&P 500 and NASDAQ. So I was a little surprised by that. When I looked into it a little bit more, it makes sense. I think there's still, like you saw with CEG today and NEE that you have, that there are definitely winners there and places to play. But if you're playing the cyclicals and the ETFs, probably not want to look at that sector as much. The other one that sort of caught me by surprise is that the SOX is actually trailing the S&P 500 as of right now when it comes into, a sector. Everyone's, NVIDIA's made such a move that we just assume everything has sort of gone on those tailwinds. But another one, like I said, I was talking with Jeremy before we came on. I saw, again, FactSet and MarketWatch came out with an interesting chart that showed, I think I still have it right here, that, what they're looking at, if you take a look at the analyst reports, Micron still 93% upside over the next 12 months based on the analyst reports. So not that they're always right or anything else, but I took a look at this and to kind of give myself a good read into what other micro, semiconductors might be looked at. Because, everybody knows Marvell, everybody knows Micron, everybody knows NVIDIA. I don't even know what iChor is personally, so looking at some of these other ones. And I consider myself to be pretty knowledgeable in the chip sector because, again, of my background in Bitcoin mining. But this is, I thought an interesting chart to take a look at and start to get some trading ideas based on. I like to see how things work.
So I'm obviously an ETF guy, but I think most ETFs, especially the sector ETFs, just suck. If you want exposure to semiconductors, pick your own semis and then use puts on SMH or SOX, to hedge if you want to. But, just, with a little bit of thought, you're going to come up with a better semi portfolio than just, some dumb index does.
That's a great insight, especially coming from you who creates those. So, understands that they're not made for, and they're not necessarily always made for that, right? They're made to give a balanced look at certain things or a weighted look at a sector. They're not necessarily, that's what people don't understand. There's not necessarily, it's not like a hedge fund where someone's in there saying, hey, I'm trying to pick the winners and losers. I'm weighting this based upon X, Y, and Z factors. So that's a great point. Jeremy,
right. You're not getting the best of the best managers in the ETF world.
Right.
You get, you get paid on the hedge fund side. So
the idea that we have over at Bullish Bears is anytime you're utilizing an ETF, mainly you watch them for rotation, especially if they're sector bound. And then when it comes to finding the stocks in them, just open them up. You can see their top 10 holdings and, pick the one that makes the most sense for you from a technical analysis
point of view.
Absolutely.
And trade it.
That goes to what I
we
was
can
saying, and what I like to do is kind of look at them and then move, from that list to get my other ideas, exactly. Well, guys, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I do know you guys got busy days and got to get ready for tomorrow's big watch list, but I wanted to get you on if I could just to introduce yourselves and let our readers, our watchers know what to take a look for tomorrow. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on, and I hope to have you on every once in a while to give us little updates like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Again, thanks for having us, and always a pleasure. Anytime we can get out and help people, that's what we're about.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.